Nathan Park had never imagined that his life would change forever because of a spilled latte and a desperate pop idol hiding behind a pair of oversized sunglasses in a cramped university coffee shop. But that's exactly what happened on a dreary Tuesday morning in October when he accidentally bumped into the most famous person in the country without even realizing it. Nathan was rushing between his marketing classes, juggling his textbooks, laptop bag, and what was supposed to be a carefully balanced coffee when he collided with someone trying to squeeze past the overcrowded seating area. The collision sent his latte flying directly onto the stranger's white hoodie, creating a spectacular brown stain that spread across the expensive-looking fabric like a caffeinated abstract painting. The stranger looked up from examining the damage, and Nathan found himself staring into the most beautiful pair of dark eyes he had ever seen. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The stranger had delicate features, perfectly styled black hair that somehow looked effortlessly tousled, and skin that seemed to glow even under the harsh fluorescent lighting of the campus coffee shop. There was something familiar about his face, but Nathan couldn't quite place where he might have seen him before. "I am so sorry," Nathan stammered, immediately reaching for the napkins on the nearest table. "I can pay for dry cleaning, or buy you a new hoodie, or literally anything to make up for this. I'm usually not this clumsy, I swear." "Well, actually, that's not true. I'm pretty clumsy most of the time, but I'm usually not this clumsy with expensive-looking clothing items belonging to strangers who are probably way too cool to be talking to someone like me." The stranger's lips quirked up in what might have been amusement, and he pulled down his sunglasses slightly to get a better look at Nathan. "It's okay," he said, his voice surprisingly soft and melodic. "Accidents happen. Though I have to say, this is probably the most interesting thing that's happened to me in weeks." Nathan was dabbing ineffectively at the coffee stain with a handful of napkins, acutely aware that he was probably making the situation worse rather than better. "I really am sorry. This hoodie looks expensive, and I know I probably can't afford to replace it, but I'll figure something out. Maybe I can work extra shifts at my campus job, or sell some textbooks, or donate plasma. Do people still donate plasma for money? I feel like that's something people did in college, but maybe that's just in movies." The stranger was definitely smiling now, and Nathan realized that he was rambling in the way he always did when he was nervous or embarrassed. "You don't need to donate plasma," the stranger said. "Though I appreciate the offer. I'm more concerned about whether you're okay. You look like you're about to hyperventilate." Nathan forced himself to take a deep breath and step back from the coffee-stained hoodie. "I'm fine, just mortified, and probably about to be late for my consumer psychology class, which is ironic because I clearly don't understand consumer behavior well enough to navigate a simple coffee shop without causing disasters." "Consumer psychology sounds interesting," the stranger said, seeming genuinely curious. "Are you studying marketing?" "Marketing and communications," Nathan confirmed, surprised that this obviously cool and put-together person was interested in his academic pursuits. "Though at this rate, I'll probably end up with a degree in professional embarrassment with a minor in social disasters." The stranger laughed, a genuine sound that made Nathan's stomach do something fluttery and unexpected. "I doubt that. You seem like someone who cares about doing the right thing even when accidents happen. That's actually pretty rare." Nathan felt his cheeks warming, partly from the compliment and partly from the realization that he was having the longest conversation he'd had with an attractive stranger in months. "I should probably let you get back to whatever you were doing before I attacked you with caffeinated beverages, but seriously, please let me know how much the cleaning costs. I can give you my number, or my email, or send you a carrier pigeon, whatever works best for your preferred method of communication." The stranger considered this for a moment, tilting his head in a way that made his hair catch the light. "Actually, can I ask you something? This might sound weird, but would you be interested in helping me with a project? It's kind of complicated to explain, but I could use someone who seems honest and genuine, and who apparently has no idea who I am, which is honestly refreshing." Nathan blinked in confusion. "Who you are? Should I know who you are? Are you famous or something? Oh God, are you someone important and I've been rambling at you like an idiot? I'm so sorry, I don't really keep up with pop culture or social media trends. I spend most of my time buried in textbooks and trying to figure out how to afford groceries." The stranger's smile widened, and he pulled off his sunglasses entirely, revealing his face fully for the first time. "I'm Ethan Song," he said, as if this should mean something significant. Nathan stared at him blankly for several seconds before shaking his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, I really don't know who that is. Should I? Are you a professor here? You look pretty young to be faculty, but maybe you're one of those genius types who graduated early and came back to teach." Ethan Song looked genuinely delighted by Nathan's ignorance. "I'm a singer," he explained. "I was in a boy band called Aurora, and now I have a solo career. I'm I'm pretty famous. My face is on billboards and magazine covers. I have millions of social media followers, and there are usually photographers following me around trying to get pictures for gossip websites." Nathan's eyes widened as the information sank in. "Oh wow, that sounds intense, and kind of awful actually. No wonder you're wearing sunglasses indoors. Are you hiding from paparazzi right now? Is that why you're in a college coffee shop instead of somewhere fancier? This is actually one of the few places I can go without being immediately recognized and mobbed by fans or photographers. Most people here are too busy studying or complaining about student loans to pay attention to pop music celebrities. Nathan felt a wave of sympathy for this beautiful stranger who apparently lived his life under constant scrutiny. That sounds really lonely, actually, not being able to go places or do normal things without being bothered by people. It is lonely, Ethan agreed, his expression becoming more serious. Which brings me back to my question about helping me with a project. See, my management team has been pressuring me to get into a public relationship to help with my image and publicity. They think it will make me seem more relatable and mature, and help me transition from teen idol to serious adult artist. Nathan nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure where this conversation was heading. That makes sense from a marketing perspective, I guess. Public relationships can definitely humanize celebrities and create emotional connections with audiences, right? Ethan said. But the problem is, I don't want to actually date someone just for publicity. It feels dishonest and manipulative, both to the other person and to my fans. But my team is getting more insistent, and I'm running out of ways to avoid their matchmaking attempts with other celebrities or social media influencers. Nathan was beginning to understand where this might be going, and his heart started beating faster with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. So you need someone to pretend to be your boyfriend for publicity purposes, but someone who knows it's fake from the beginning so nobody gets hurt or manipulated. Someone who doesn't care about fame or publicity. Someone who won't try to leverage the fake relationship for their own benefit. And someone who seems genuine and normal enough to make the relationship believable to the public. Nathan stared at him in amazement. And you think I'm that person? You literally just met me 5 minutes ago when I assaulted you with coffee. You don't know anything about me except that I'm clumsy and I ramble when I'm nervous. But that's exactly why it would work, Ethan explained. You're not trying to impress me or get something from me, you're just being yourself, which is apparently someone who cares more about making sure I'm okay after an accident than about who I am or what I can do for you. That kind of authenticity is really rare in my world. Nathan felt his mind racing as he tried to process this surreal conversation. What would this fake relationship actually involve? I mean, I assume it's not just holding hands and looking cute at coffee shops. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Nathan his calendar, which was packed with events, appearances, and commitments. Red carpet events, award shows, magazine interviews, social media posts, public dates that get photographed by paparazzi. Basically, we'd need to convince the world that we're genuinely in love, at least for a few months until the publicity goals are met and we can have a believable public breakup. Nathan looked at the overwhelming schedule and felt his anxiety spiking. That sounds terrifying. I've never been to a red carpet event, I don't know how to pose for photographers, and I'm pretty sure I'd say something embarrassing in interviews. Are you sure you want someone like me for this? Wouldn't it make more sense to find another celebrity or someone who's used to being in the public eye? That's exactly what my management team wants me to do, Ethan said. But those relationships always feel so obviously fake and calculated. I want something that feels real, even if it isn't. I want people to look at us and believe that we actually care about each other, that there's genuine emotion there. Nathan considered this, surprised by how appealing the idea was despite his nervousness about the logistics. What's in it for me? I mean, besides the obvious thrill of pretending to date someone who looks like they stepped out of a magazine. Ethan smiled at the compliment. Well, there would be compensation for your time and the disruption to your normal life, enough to cover your tuition and living expenses, plus extra for the inconvenience. And my team would provide coaching for public appearances, wardrobe styling, media training, all of that stuff. You wouldn't be thrown into the deep end without support. The mention of tuition and living expenses made Nathan's decision much easier. He had been working multiple part-time jobs and still struggling to afford his education and basic necessities. The opportunity to focus on his studies without constant financial stress was incredibly appealing, even if it came with the surreal requirement of pretending to be in love with a pop star. How long would this arrangement last? Nathan asked, trying to think through the practical implications. Probably 6 months to a year, Ethan replied. Long enough to establish the relationship in the public mind and achieve the publicity goals, but not so long that it becomes a major commitment for either of us. And we'd work together on the timeline and the eventual breakup story, so everything feels natural and believable. Nathan realized that he was seriously considering this insane proposal, and he wasn't entirely sure what that said about his judgment or his priorities. Can I think about it? This is probably the most surreal conversation I've ever had, and I want to make sure I'm thinking clearly rather than just being dazzled by the novelty of it all. Of course, Ethan said, pulling out his phone again. Here's my private number. Take as much time as you need to think it over, and call me when you've decided. Just don't take too long because my management team is getting impatient and I'd rather work with you than whatever alternative they come up with. Nathan saved the number in his phone, still feeling like he was living in some kind of alternate reality. Just out of curiosity, what made you think I'd be interested in this? You could have asked anyone for help with your coffee stain crisis, but instead you're offering me a life-changing opportunity. That seems like a pretty big leap. Ethan shrugged, but his expression suggested that he'd thought about this more than his casual tone implied. Honestly, you seem kind and real, and like someone who would take this seriously rather than treating it as a joke or an opportunity to become famous yourself. Plus, you have a great smile and you're cute when you're flustered, which doesn't hurt for publicity purposes. Nathan felt his cheeks burning again, both from the compliments and from the realization that he was definitely going to say yes to this crazy proposal. I should probably warn you that I'm going to overthink this decision and call you with a million questions about logistics and expectations and contingency plans. I would be disappointed if you didn't, Ethan replied. Someone who makes impulsive decisions without considering the consequences probably isn't the right person for this kind of arrangement. Nathan gathered his scattered textbooks and what remained of his dignity, still processing the fact that his biggest worry 15 minutes ago had been being late for class, and now he was contemplating becoming the fake boyfriend of a famous pop star. I'll call you tonight after I've had some time to think and probably panic appropriately. Take all the time you need, Ethan said, putting his sunglasses back on as other students began filtering into the coffee shop for the afternoon rush. And Nathan, thanks for treating me like a normal person even after you found out who I am. That means more than you probably realize. As Nathan walked toward his classroom, his head spinning with possibilities and implications, he couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of his situation. He had started the day worried about affording textbooks for next semester, and now he was considering an opportunity that would solve his financial problems while simultaneously turning his quiet, anonymous life completely upside down. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that his decision had been made the moment Ethan smiled at him in the coffee shop. The logistics and concerns were important, but the fundamental question was whether he was brave enough to step outside his comfort zone and into a world he'd never imagined being part of. By the time Nathan reached his classroom, he knew he was going to call Ethan that evening and say yes. Chapter 2: Learning the Rules. Nathan spent the rest of the day in a state of distracted anxiety that made it impossible to focus on his lectures or assignments. He kept pulling out his phone to stare at Ethan's contact information, alternating between excitement about the opportunity and terror about what he was getting himself into. His consumer psychology professor had to call his name twice during class discussion because he was too busy imagining himself at red carpet events to pay attention to the lesson about brand loyalty and emotional marketing. That evening, Nathan sat on his narrow dorm bed with a notebook full of questions he'd brainstormed throughout the day. He had researched Ethan online, which turned out to be both enlightening and overwhelming. Ethan's song was indeed massively famous, with a devoted fan base that seemed to analyze his every public appearance and social media post. The idea of becoming part of that scrutiny made Nathan's stomach churn, but the financial security and unique experience still seemed worth the anxiety. When Nathan finally called Ethan's private number, his heart was beating so fast he worried it might be audible through the phone. Ethan answered on the second ring, sounding genuinely pleased to hear from him. "I was hoping you'd call tonight," Ethan said. "I've been thinking about our conversation all day, and I keep coming back to the feeling that this could really work if you're interested." "I am interested," Nathan replied, surprised by how confident he sounded despite his nervousness. "But I have approximately 50 questions about how this would actually work, and I need to understand what I'm agreeing to before I can commit to anything." "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say," Ethan responded. "Someone who jumps into this without questions would probably be doing it for the wrong reasons. What do you want to know?" Nathan consulted his notebook, grateful for his tendency to over-prepare for important conversations. "First, the practical stuff. Where would I live during this arrangement? I assume my dorm room isn't exactly suitable for a celebrity's boyfriend, but I also can't afford anything fancy. My team would set you up with a nice apartment," Ethan explained. "Nothing too extravagant because we want this relationship to seem realistic, but definitely a significant upgrade from dorm life. You'd have your own space for when we're not doing public appearances together. What about my education? I'm not willing to drop out of school for this, even temporarily." "Absolutely not," Ethan agreed. "Part of what makes you perfect for this is that you have your own life and goals. We'd work around your class schedule, and you'd have tutoring support if needed to help manage the demands of public appearances with your academic requirements." Nathan felt relieved by these answers, which suggested that Ethan and his team had thought seriously about the practical implications rather than just focusing on the publicity benefits. "What about the physical aspects of the relationship? I mean, we're supposedly going to be in love, so people will expect us to act like it in public." There was a pause before Ethan responded, and Nathan wondered if he'd crossed some kind of boundary with the question. "We'd need to be comfortable with basic physical affection," Ethan said carefully. "Holding hands, casual touches, maybe kissing for photographs, but we'd establish clear boundaries about what we're both comfortable with, and we'd practice so it looks natural rather than awkward." Nathan felt his cheeks warming at the mention of kissing, though he tried to keep his voice neutral. "That makes sense. I've never had to fake physical affection before, so I definitely need practice to make it look convincing. Most people assume that kind of thing comes naturally to performers, but it's actually a skill that requires work and communication," Ethan explained. The good news is that you seem like someone who would take it seriously and put in the effort to make it believable. What about your fans? Nathan asked, moving to what he suspected might be the most challenging aspect of the arrangement. I looked you up online today, and your fan base seems pretty intense. Are they going to hate me for dating you? Are they going to try to find out everything about my background and personal life? Ethan's sigh was audible through the phone. That's probably the hardest part of what I'm asking you to do. My fans are amazing and supportive, but they're also protective and curious about my personal life. Some of them will probably react negatively at first, especially if they feel like you came out of nowhere. And yes, they'll definitely investigate your background and try to find information about you. Nathan felt his anxiety spiking as he considered the implications of having thousands of strangers analyzing his social media accounts and personal history. Is there anything I should be worried about them finding? I mean, I don't have any major scandals or embarrassing secrets, but I'm sure there are plenty of awkward photos and stupid posts from high school. My team would help you clean up your online presence before we go public, Ethan assured him. And honestly, the fact that you're a normal college student without any major drama is actually perfect for this. It makes the relationship more relatable and believable. Nathan worked through several more practical questions about schedules, media training, and communication with Ethan's management team. Each answer made the arrangement seem more real and feasible, but also more complex than he'd initially imagined. Can I ask you something more personal? Nathan said, reaching the end of his prepared questions. Why are you going along with this publicity relationship idea if you don't really want to date someone for show? It's your career and your life. Can't you just refuse to do it? Ethan was quiet for a moment before responding. The music industry is really complicated, especially for someone like me who started as a teen idol. My management team and record label have invested a lot of money in my career, and they have strong opinions about what's necessary for my success. I have some autonomy, but not as much as people might think. Nathan heard something in Ethan's voice that suggested there were deeper issues at play, but he didn't feel comfortable pushing for more personal information during their first real conversation. That sounds frustrating. It must be hard to balance your own desires with other people's expectations about your career. It is, Ethan confirmed, which is why I want to handle this publicity relationship on my own terms with someone I actually like and respect, rather than letting my team set me up with someone who's only interested in the fame and opportunities. Nathan felt touched by the implication that Ethan already liked and respected him, despite their brief acquaintance. What happens if this doesn't work out? I mean, what if I'm terrible at public appearances, or the fans hate me, or we just don't have believable chemistry? Then we figure out an exit strategy that protects both of us, Ethan replied without hesitation. I'm not going to throw you to the wolves if this becomes more difficult than anticipated. Part of what I like about working with you is that you're asking these questions, instead of just being blinded by the novelty of it all. Nathan realized that he'd worked through all his major concerns, and that Ethan's answers had been more thoughtful and reassuring than he'd expected. I think I want to do this, he said, surprised by how certain he sounded. It's terrifying and completely outside my comfort zone, but it also seems like an incredible opportunity to experience something I never could have imagined. Really? Ethan sounded genuinely excited. You're sure you're ready for your life to get completely weird for the next several months? I'm sure I'm ready to try, Nathan replied, though I reserve the right to panic occasionally and call you with completely irrational concerns about whether I'm holding your hand correctly or wearing the right shoes to award shows. Ethan laughed, the sound warm and genuine through the phone. I would be worried if you weren't at least a little nervous about this. When can you meet with my team to discuss the details and timeline? Nathan checked his class schedule, trying to find time for what would probably be the most surreal meeting of his life. I'm free Thursday afternoon if that works, though I should probably warn you that I'm going to show up with another notebook full of questions. Perfect, Ethan said. And Nathan, thank you for agreeing to this. I know it's a big ask, and I really appreciate that you're willing to help me handle this situation on my own terms. After Nathan hung up the phone, he sat in his dorm room for a long time trying to process the fact that he'd just agreed to become the fake boyfriend of one of the most famous musicians in the country. Part of him wondered if he was making a huge mistake, but a larger part of him was excited about the adventure and the opportunity to step into a completely different world. Nathan spent the next 2 days researching everything he could about Ethan's career, his previous relationships, and the expectations that would come with being in the public eye. The more he learned, the more he understood why Ethan wanted to work with someone genuine rather than another celebrity or influencer. The entertainment industry seemed full of calculated relationships and strategic partnerships that prioritized publicity over authenticity. By Thursday afternoon, Nathan felt as prepared as possible for his meeting with Ethan's management team, though he suspected that no amount of preparation could really ready him for what he was about to experience. Chapter 3: The First Appearance. The meeting with Ethan's management team took place in a sleek downtown office that screamed expensive success. Nathan felt completely out of place in his best jeans and button-down shirt, surrounded by people in designer clothing who spoke in industry jargon and treated his presence as a business transaction rather than a personal arrangement. Ethan's manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Walsh, explained the publicity timeline with the efficiency of someone who had orchestrated many celebrity relationships. "We'll start with some private dates that happen to be photographed by paparazzi," she explained, showing Nathan a detailed schedule on her tablet. Nothing too obvious, but enough to get people talking and speculating about Ethan's love life. Nathan took notes frantically, trying to keep up with the rapid-fire discussion of photo opportunities, social media strategies, and media talking points. The whole process felt surreal, like planning a military operation rather than a romance. "The key is to make everything look natural and unplanned," explained Marcus Chen, the publicist. "We want people to discover your relationship organically, not feel like it's being forced down their throats." Ethan sat quietly during most of the meeting, occasionally offering input but generally letting his team handle the strategic planning. Nathan noticed that he seemed less enthusiastic about the process than he had during their private conversations, and wondered if having the arrangement discussed in such clinical terms was uncomfortable for him too. The team spent considerable time coaching Nathan on how to behave around paparazzi, how to answer questions from reporters, and how to present himself on social media. They also provided him with a new wardrobe that was designed to make him look like someone who could realistically be dating a pop star without appearing to be trying too hard to fit into celebrity culture. "Remember," Jennifer emphasized as the meeting wrapped up, "the goal is believable authenticity. You're not trying to become a celebrity yourself, you're just being Nathan, who happens to be in love with Ethan." Nathan felt a strange flutter in his stomach at the phrase "in love with Ethan," even though he knew it was just part of the professional discussion. The past few days of preparation had involved spending considerable time with Ethan, practicing their public interactions and getting to know each other well enough to make their chemistry believable. Their first official public appearance was scheduled for the following weekend at a popular restaurant known for celebrity sightings. The plan was for them to have a casual dinner that would appear romantic to any photographers who happened to capture them together. Nathan spent the week before their debut date in a state of nervous excitement that made it difficult to concentrate on his schoolwork. He practiced walking confidently, sitting naturally while being photographed, and maintaining conversation while being aware of potential cameras. The amount of thought and preparation required for what was supposed to look like a spontaneous romantic evening was exhausting. The night of their first public appearance, Nathan met Ethan at the restaurant feeling like he was about to perform in a play he'd only partially memorized. Ethan looked effortlessly handsome in a casual button-down and dark jeans, while Nathan felt awkward and overdressed despite wearing clothes that had been specifically selected by professional stylists. "You look great," Ethan said as they were seated at a corner table that provided good sightlines for photographers while still feeling intimate. "Try to relax, we're just having dinner and getting to know each other better." Nathan tried to follow this advice, but he was acutely aware of the other diners glancing in their direction and the occasional flash of a camera phone from across the restaurant. "This is so weird," he whispered to Ethan. "I keep feeling like I'm in a fishbowl." "You get used to it," Ethan replied, reaching across the table to take Nathan's hand in a gesture that looked casual but was clearly intended for the photographers. "The key is to focus on our conversation and let everything else fade into the background." As the evening progressed, Nathan found himself genuinely enjoying Ethan's company despite the artificial circumstances of their date. Ethan was intelligent and funny, with interesting perspectives on music, creativity, and the challenges of growing up in the public eye. Their conversation flowed naturally, and Nathan found himself forgetting about the cameras and other diners for long stretches of time. "Tell me something about yourself that's not in any of your social media profiles," Ethan said, leaning forward with apparent genuine interest. "Something real that most people don't know about you." Nathan considered the question, surprised by how much he wanted to share something meaningful rather than just making conversation for the benefit of their audience. "I'm actually really afraid of failure," he admitted. "Not just normal academic stress, but like genuinely terrified that I'm not smart enough or talented enough to succeed at anything important. Sometimes I think I work so hard in school because I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm capable of accomplishing something significant." Ethan's expression became more serious, and Nathan realized that his honesty had created a moment of genuine connection between them. "I understand that fear," Ethan said quietly. "Success in the music industry can be so arbitrary and dependent on factors beyond your control. Sometimes I worry that everything I've achieved is just luck, and that I'll be exposed as someone who doesn't really deserve the opportunities I've been given." Nathan felt a wave of sympathy for Ethan, realizing that fame and success came with their own forms of insecurity and self-doubt. "But you're incredibly talented," he said. "I spent hours listening to your music this week, and it's genuinely moving and well-crafted. That's not just luck." Ethan smiled, and Nathan noticed that this expression seemed different from the practiced charm he'd observed during their media training sessions. "Thank you. It means a lot to hear that from someone who doesn't have any professional reason to flatter me." As they shared dessert, Nathan found himself studying Ethan's face and mannerisms, trying to understand the person behind the public persona. There was a vulnerability in Ethan's expressions when he thought no one was watching, a hint of loneliness that seemed at odds with his confident stage presence. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said, emboldened by the wine and the intimacy of their conversation. Do you ever get to just be yourself, without thinking about how your behavior might be interpreted or photographed or analyzed by fans and media? Ethan considered the question for a moment before responding. Less and less, honestly. Sometimes I feel like I've been performing for so long that I'm not entirely sure who I am when I'm not on stage or in front of cameras. It's part of why I wanted to do this arrangement with someone genuine rather than another performer. I'm hoping that spending time with you will help me remember what it's like to have authentic interactions. Nathan felt touched by this admission, and also slightly guilty about the fact that their entire relationship was built on a performance, even if their individual personalities were genuine. I hope I can help with that, he said. Though it's ironic that we're trying to find authenticity through a fake relationship. Maybe it's not as fake as we think, Ethan replied, his eyes meeting Nathan's with an intensity that made Nathan's heart race. The feelings and conversations are real, even if the circumstances are artificial. As they left the restaurant, Nathan was surprised by how natural it felt when Ethan took his hand and led him to the car. The cameras flashed around them, but Nathan found himself focusing on the warmth of Ethan's fingers intertwined with his own rather than the attention from photographers and onlookers. During the drive back to Nathan's new apartment, they talked about how the evening had gone and what they could improve for future public appearances. But underneath the practical discussion, Nathan sensed a shift in their dynamic. The boundary between their professional arrangement and personal connection was becoming less clear, and Nathan wasn't entirely sure how he felt about that development. You did really well tonight, Ethan said as they arrived at Nathan's building. You seemed natural and comfortable, and I think people will definitely believe that we have genuine chemistry. Nathan felt a flutter of pride at the compliment, though he wasn't sure whether his comfort had been due to good acting or actual attraction to Ethan. Thanks, it was easier than I expected once I stopped overthinking everything. Ethan walked Nathan to his door, maintaining their public persona in case any paparazzi had followed them. I'll call you tomorrow to talk about how the photos turned out and plan our next appearance, he said, leaning in to give Nathan a brief kiss on the cheek that appeared casual but sent electricity through Nathan's entire body. As Nathan went to bed that night, he found himself replaying moments from the evening and analyzing his own reactions to Ethan's attention and affection. He had expected the physical aspects of their fake relationship to feel awkward and performative, but instead he'd found himself genuinely attracted to Ethan's intelligence, humor, and unexpected vulnerability. Nathan fell asleep wondering whether his growing feelings for Ethan were a problem that would complicate their professional arrangement or an opportunity for something more meaningful than either of them had anticipated. Chapter 4. Growing Feelings. Over the next month, Nathan and Ethan settled into a routine of public appearances, private rehearsals, and increasingly personal conversations that blurred the lines between their professional arrangement and genuine friendship. They attended movie premieres, charity events, and casual lunch dates that were strategically photographed by paparazzi who seemed to appear wherever they went. Nathan gradually became more comfortable with the constant attention and scrutiny that came with being in the public eye. He learned to pose naturally for photographs, answer interview questions with practiced charm, and navigate social media interactions with Ethan's devoted fan base. Some fans had initially been skeptical or hostile toward Nathan, but most seemed to accept him as a positive influence in Ethan's life. What Nathan hadn't expected was how much he would enjoy spending time with Ethan outside of their scheduled public appearances. They began having genuine conversations about their goals, fears, and experiences, sharing aspects of themselves that had nothing to do with their publicity arrangement. Ethan told Nathan about the loneliness of fame, the pressure to maintain a perfect public image, and his struggles with creative control over his music. Nathan shared his anxieties about his future career, his complicated relationship with his family, and his dreams of using his marketing degree to work with socially responsible companies. Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if I hadn't been discovered by talent scouts when I was 15, Ethan said during one of their private dinners at Nathan's apartment. I might have gone to college like you, studied something I was actually interested in, had normal relationships that weren't complicated by fame and publicity. Nathan looked up from the takeout containers they were sharing, struck by the wistfulness in Ethan's voice. Do you regret the path your life took? I mean, you've achieved incredible success and touched millions of people with your music. I don't regret the music, Ethan replied thoughtfully. I love creating and performing, and I'm grateful for the platform I have to reach people, but I do sometimes wonder what it would be like to have relationships that aren't influenced by my celebrity status, to know that people care about me for who I am rather than what I represent. Nathan felt a pang of guilt about the artificial nature of their own relationship, even though their personal connection had become increasingly genuine. What about your relationships before you became famous? Did you have friends or romantic partners who knew you before all of this? Ethan shook his head. I was so young when my career took off that I didn't really have time to develop those kinds of relationships. Most of my friendships now are with other performers or industry people, which means there's always an element of professional networking involved. Nathan reached across the table to squeeze Ethan's hand, a gesture that had become natural between them over the past weeks.
That sounds really isolating. I can't imagine not having people in my life who knew me before I had any kind of success or recognition. It's part of why